Okay, I want to extend the discussion that we had on our Zoom call today a little bit because we don't have a lot of time on our Zoom calls, so I need to give you a little some supplemental notes on circular motion in this case. As we had been talking in class or on our Zoom call today, if you imagine me spinning something over my head on a string, let's say it's a stopper, little rubber stopper that would be in a test tube, let's say in your chemistry lab. So I'm spinning this over my head. Let's say I'm spinning it as you look down from the top. If I was spinning it, here's the top view down here. If I was spinning it in a clockwise manner, and you see at 2 points I've highlighted here, it's always moving tangent to its path at any instant in time. So it's instantaneous velocity. When it's as you look down from the top, it's moving to the right when it's at the top of the circle. It's moving down to the bottom of the screen when it's on the right side of the circle over here. But it's always tangent to the path, and every instant its direction changes. Even if its speed doesn't change, its direction's changing. We know that velocity is a vector, and since velocity is a vector, that means that direction matters. A change of direction is an acceleration. Even if speed is held constant. So you notice the length of my velocity vector isn't changing. It's just the direction in which it points is changing as I spin it around my head. So on the Zoom call today, we kind of figured out from the 3 different experiments that were done with that apparatus, and I gave you guys the data for that, and you analyzed it. It turns out the speed is related to the unbalanced force by the square of the speed. The mass is directly related, and the radius of the circle, or the length of the string in the case of my example of me spinning the stopper over my head, the length of that string is the radius of the circle. That's inversely related to the unbalanced force. And the unbalanced force, I should note to you in this discussion, in this example, is the tension in the string. That's the unbalanced force that's causing it to accelerate. Remember, something always accelerates in the direction of the unbalanced force. Since the unbalanced force is towards the center of the circle, the acceleration must be towards the center of the circle. I'm going to show you why that is on the next slide. But let's focus for a second on that equation at the top of the page. So we know from today's screencast that the unbalanced force for something moving in a circle is equal to mv squared divided by r. But for any object that experiences an external net force, Newton's second law says the unbalanced force equals mass times acceleration. Here's the mass right here. That means that v squared over r represents the acceleration of the object for something moving in a circle. So this is the C is for the central pointing, or the centripetal. Centripetal means center seeking acceleration. So it's an acceleration that's towards the center of the circle. The units are meters per second is the speed squared divided by meters, which will give me units of meters per second squared, which is exactly what I expect acceleration units to be, meters per second squared. So I'm going to talk a little bit about the direction of the acceleration, then I'll explain graphically why it's a square of the speed and inversely proportional to the radius on the next couple slides. So let's imagine that I'm spinning this thing. This is, again, is a top view. So this is looking down from the top, and I'm spinning this thing clockwise. Let's pick 2 moments in time. All right. Let's pick initial time is when the object is over here in this position. We'll call that at TI. And the final time is over here as it's passed around this way and it gets to this point right here. So there's some time it's expired. The initial velocity vector is this one. It points up to the right. The final velocity at the end of this short time interval is it's pointing down to the right. So remember that acceleration is a change of velocity over a time interval. And remember, velocity is a vector as well. Velocity is a vector, or I'm sorry, acceleration is a vector as well as velocity. So I have to find the change in the velocity vector over that unit of time. Well, so that's final minus initial velocity. And on the next screen, I'm going to show you that when I subtract the initial velocity vector from the final velocity vector, the delta v vector is going to point straight towards the center over this short time interval. So here we are again, same picture. I'm going to get rid of my circle here. All right, and remember when I subtract two things, so VF minus VI, when I subtract one vector from another, it's like adding the negative. So it's like adding a negative VI. Well, negative VI is the same magnitude but in the opposite direction. So I'm going to go ahead and flip that in the opposite direction. All right. And then I have to put it tip to tail with VF. All right, so let me move VF over here. Let me move VFI over here. There's tip to tail. And that's no longer VI, it's now negative VI. I'm adding them tip to tail, right? And remember, I draw the resultant vector from the beginning of the first to the tip of the last. So I have to draw my resultant vector from the tail of the first to the tip of the last. So that's going to look like that. So this is the delta v vector. And notice how it points straight down. Well, straight down is towards the center of that circle because remember, VI was right here, VF was right here. So you're pointing straight down towards the center of the circle with your delta v vector. That's the same direction as your acceleration vector because your acceleration is delta v over delta t. So your acceleration will point in the same direction. So that's kind of a graphical interpretation of that change of velocity vector by looking at it that way. Now let's talk about why is the equation for acceleration v squared over r? Why is it dependent on the square of the speed? Well, I'm going to use a graphic from your textbook to hopefully help you understand this. This is right out of your e-text, so follow along with me on this. I'm starting in the upper left here with experiment 1, the object moving now. It's actually moving counterclockwise, so this is different than what I've been showing you. So now it's moving counterclockwise. So at this instant in time, this object is, moving to the left at a certain speed. All right. So they take the initial moment in time here on the left and the final moment in time, or on the right, final moment in time here on the left, and their delta v points down towards the center. You notice they add their vectors a little different than I do. I would go VF. Sorry, let me get my pen out. I would go VF, and a negative VI would be that way, and that would be my delta v vector right there. They get the same delta v vector, but they put, instead of flipping the VI around, they put the two arrows tail to tail instead of negative VI tip to tail. Gives you the same result. So the delta v vector is a certain length, shown there. Now when they double the speed in experiment 2, they keep the mass the same, they keep the radius the same, they just double the speed of the object spinning in a circle. So instead of vector v up here that we already saw, this is 2v, it's twice as long. So when I find my delta v vector right here is twice as long as my delta v vector was up above. But because it spins from this point here to this point here, the same distance in half the time, so you're spinning twice as fast, you've got a delta v vector twice as long, and you're dividing the denominator by a time interval that's half as big, the result is delta v over delta t is 4 times bigger. So by doubling the velocity, you quadruple the acceleration because you've got the velocity vector getting longer and you're moving from across that same arc length in half the time. So that's why you've got that v squared in the numerator up here in this equation for acceleration. How about radius in the denominator? Let's go to another slide here. So this is also from your e-text, and this is explaining why radius is inversely related to acceleration. I'm going to write that relationship up here again. Acceleration is v squared over r. So we're talking about the radius on this slide. So we have a small radius on this circle up here, and I'm sorry, there's my radius right there. Small radius with a certain speed, same exact speed in experiment 2, but we've doubled the radius, okay? So the delta v vector here is a certain length. Here the delta v vector is exactly the same length because I haven't changed the speed at all, so my delta v vector is the same. But now to go from here to here, that arc length, this arc length is twice as long. So it's going to take twice as much time. So I've got 2t in the denominator. So my delta v vector is the same in the numerator. I've got 2 delta t in the denominator. So that's going to give me half the acceleration in experiment 2 as I had in experiment 1. So doubling the radius gave me half the acceleration. So that means the radius is inversely related to the acceleration. So that's graphically why you get that equation. We also saw experimentally from the data that you guys analyzed that it works out that way experimentally. I think I'm going to end it there, and tomorrow we're going to work on a worksheet on our Zoom call together to actually apply this idea of acceleration. We call it centripetal acceleration, center-seeking acceleration for things that move in a circle. We're going to apply it, and hopefully it will make sense to you. All right, have a good afternoon, guys.